He was 7 years old when his mother died. She had been dying slowly for years, sinking deeper into depression after the death of his older brother, until she couldn't cope with much of anything at all. When she finally went, his father left him with a half-sister who moved them to Milan, renounced his citizenship, and forgot to apply for a new one. That administrative error made him stateless for the rest of his life. Then the father died too, the half-sister couldn't manage, and the boy ended up alone on the streets. The police found him and sent him to a reformatory, where he learned to cobble shoes and almost nothing else, because nobody thought to teach him to read or write. That boy's name was Giovanni Segantini, and in 1894, at the height of his fame, he painted a woman tangled in the frozen branches of a dead winter tree, a ghost-faced infant trying to nurse at her breast, the cold white void of the Alps stretching around her to infinity. He called it the Bad Mothers. He meant it as a punishment. He painted it as a nightmare. And if you know who painted it, it reads like something else entirely. The painting is enormous in person, 2 meters wide, and the first thing it does is make you cold. Segantini was obsessed with alpine light, with the specific quality of white that exists only at high altitude, and here he uses that skill to build a landscape that is beautiful and completely inhospitable. The snow is painted in hundreds of minute threads of colour, white and blue, grey and silver, divisionist technique applied to a symbolist image, and the effect is that the ground looks almost alive. The mountains behind are shadows, the sky is the pale, washed-out colour of extreme cold. In the centre of this is a woman. She's tangled in the bare branches of a tree, not exactly hanging but not standing either, suspended in a posture that mirrors the contortion of the branches around her. Her hair has been caught and pulled back, her body is twisted, her face is turned upward, and her expression, remarkably, is not anguish. It's closer to exhaustion. She's been here a while. From the branches near her breast, a baby's face emerges. The child is translucent, somewhere between a ghost and a newborn, and it appears to be trying to nurse. She is not letting it. 2 more figures are visible deeper into the painting, similarly entangled in their own trees, smaller, barely distinguishable from the landscape. The same fate, further away. To understand what Segantini painted, you need to know where the image came from, because it didn't come from him alone. It came from a poem. In 1891, 3 years before this painting, Segantini completed The Punishment of Lust, the companion work to The Bad Mothers. In letters to his dealer, he explained both paintings by referencing a poem called Nirvana, written by his friend Luigi Illica, a librettist who would later write the texts for La Bohème and Madame a Butterfly. Illica's poem, in turn, drew from a 12th century Benedictine monk named Alberico da Setefrati, who claimed to have had a vision of purgatory. In that vision, women who had refused motherhood or abandoned children or sought pleasure without consequence were condemned to hover in the frozen space above an alpine valley, trapped there for eternity. Segantini took that image and made it literal. The floating women in The Punishment of Lust are suspended above the snow, barely touching anything. In The Bad Mothers, they've been caught by the trees which have grown around them, which are holding them in place. The trees, in Segantini's own reading, are the tree of life. The branches are the children they rejected, now part of the landscape, now inseparable from them. He wrote about these paintings with an unsettling degree of certainty. The women being punished were, in his words, vain and sterile, lustful women who wanted to take without the consequences of motherhood. He painted their suffering as justice. He described the colour palette, white and silver and gold, as a symphony. He found it beautiful, and he was, at the same time, a man who had lost his mother at 7 and spent his childhood in a reformatory because she wasn't there to stop it. The art historian Annie Paul Kinsack, one of the foremost scholars on Segantini, put it this way: the loss of his mother at such a young age explains both the centrality of the theme of motherhood in his work and the ambivalence in his portrayals of it. For him, as for many of his contemporaries, motherhood was the primary and sublime mission of woman. But there is a word Kinsack uses that matters: ambivalence, not reverence, ambivalence. Giovanni Segantini was born in 1858 in Arco, in what is now northern Italy, then part of the Austrian Tyrol. His father was a travelling peddler who was almost never home. His mother, Margherita, suffered a severe depression after the death of Segantini's older brother, a depression she never recovered from. The years of Segantini's early childhood were years of poverty, hunger, a mother who was present but barely there. She died in 1865. He was 7. His father left him with his half-sister Irene, went looking for work, and died a year later without coming back. Irene moved them to Milan, went to the consulate, and formally renounced their Austrian citizenship. She didn't apply for Italian citizenship. It wasn't an act of malice. It was an administrative oversight that made both of them stateless and unable to legally travel for the rest of their lives. Irene was too poor to look after him. He ended up on the streets. He begged. He committed what the records call minor offences. In 1870, when he was 12, the police arrested him for vagrancy and sent him to the Marchionne Reformatory, an institution for orphaned and wayward youth. He couldn't read. He couldn't write. He learned to cobble shoes. He would not learn to read and write until he was in his mid-30s. What he could do from the beginning was draw. A chaplain at the reformatory noticed and encouraged it. That chaplain may have saved his life, in the most literal sense, because without that small recognition of what he was capable of, there would have been no path out. By the 1880s, he was selling. By the late 1880s, he was celebrated. By 1894, the year he painted The Bad Mothers, museums across Europe were competing to acquire his work. He was awarded his own room at the Salon de Dainty in Brussels, a distinction given to Cézanne and Van Gogh. He couldn't attend the ceremony. He didn't have a passport. He was still stateless. He had fallen in love in 1879 with a woman named Luigia Pierina Bugatti, known as Bis, the sister of a friend. He wanted to marry her. He couldn't. No passport, no papers, no legal identity recognized by any government. So they lived together unmarried, which in late 19th century Catholic Europe meant constant displacement, constant social friction, moving from village to village when local communities became hostile. He adored her. He wrote her letters full of pressed wildflowers when he was away painting. He had 4 children with Bis. He painted mothers over and over with a tenderness that amounts to something like longing, and he painted the bad mothers. Look at her face for a moment. The thing that's strange about it, the thing that makes this painting hard to shake, is that she doesn't look like she's in agony. Her expression is somewhere between blankness and a kind of reluctant surrender. She's not fighting the branches anymore. The mouth is slightly open. The eyes are turned upward. Segantini intended this as purgatory, a transitional punishment, and in his reading this expression is the beginning of submission to her fate, the first step toward redemption. In the companion poem, the women who finally accept motherhood are released. The tree becomes the tree of life, branches turning green, the barren winter giving way to spring. Segantini believed what he was painting. This wasn't cruelty for its own sake. It was a theological argument rendered in oil. The branches are extraordinary as a piece of painting. Segantini has painted them with the same divisionist technique he used for the snow, each one built from scores of individual marks, and the effect is that they look almost organic, almost alive. Where the branches meet the woman's hair and body, the distinction between her and the tree begins to blur. She is becoming part of it. The tree is growing into her. This is deliberate. In Segantini's symbolism, the woman who rejected nature's function becomes literally consumed by nature. The punishment fits the crime in a way that is, depending on your reading, either poetically just or genuinely disturbing. The child is the most unsettling element. It's not painted the way the woman or the branches or the snow are painted. It's translucent, barely there, more apparition than person. The face is turned toward her breast with an expression of terrible need. This is the child who doesn't exist, or the child that was lost, or the child who was refused, and its hunger is not hunger exactly. It's something more like a haunting. The technical achievement of this painting is genuinely remarkable. Segantini is working in what's called divisionism, an Italian variant of the pointillist approach being developed simultaneously by Seurat and Signac in France. Every surface is built from individual strokes of pure colour placed next to each other rather than mixed. Up close, the snow is dozens of colours: blue, grey, white, lilac, gold. At distance, the eye fuses them and the snow becomes luminous in a way no single colour could achieve. He spent years refining this, and he chose it specifically for the alpine landscapes because it captures the quality of high-altitude light, the way the sun hits snow at altitude, the clarity and coldness of that air. He used a technique developed for beauty to paint a punishment. That choice is not accidental. The painting is beautiful. That's part of the argument. Step back from the detail and look at the whole composition. The woman is almost perfectly centered, the trees framing her like a stage set, the distant figures providing a kind of terrible echo. This will happen again and again. The space around her is enormous. Segantini gives her no shelter, no proximity, no warmth. The mountains are far. The sky offers nothing. She is utterly alone in a landscape of extraordinary scale, which is exactly where he grew up. Here is the thing that the painting doesn't tell you, and that almost nobody mentions. While Segantini was painting women who abandoned their children being consumed by trees for eternity, he was also a man who could not marry the mother of his children because the Italian government didn't acknowledge his existence. Bice, the woman he spent his life with, became legally stateless upon his death because they never married. She had no claim on anything. He had campaigned throughout his adult life for Italian citizenship, refused Swiss citizenship that was offered to him multiple times because he wanted to be recognized as Italian, and died in 1899 without ever having a passport. The man who painted the bad mothers as divine punishment for women who refused conventional maternity was himself unable to give his family legal existence because of bureaucratic indifference. The irony isn't incidental, it's structural. His biographers have called this hypocrisy. It is also something more complicated. Segantini believed with genuine intensity that motherhood was sacred. He also loved Bice with an intensity that is not in question. He spent his career painting mothers with a tenderness so specific it reads as grief. He painted punished mothers with a certainty that reads as theology. He was 7 when she died. He was on the street at 12 because she was gone and nobody came. He painted women consumed by trees for refusing what his mother had, arguably, refused, and he painted them being consumed by nature, while simultaneously insisting that nature was God, that the mountains were sacred, that the landscape spoke the word love to those willing to hear it. This is not a man who was simply misogynist, though the paintings are certainly that in their premise. This is a man who was working something out and who never quite got there before he died on a mountaintop in 1899 of peritonitis. 41 years old, still stateless, the great alpine triptych he was racing to finish left incomplete. The Bad Mothers was purchased by the Vienna Secession, the radical art movement that formed in direct opposition to the conservative academic establishment, and it hung there as a statement of what serious modern painting could do. The painting is important not because of what Segantini intended, which was a moralizing theological allegory about women's duties, but because of what he couldn't help revealing. Every painting is a self-portrait in some register. This one is a portrait of abandonment painted by the abandoned. The ghost child reaching for its mother is not metaphysical, it's autobiographical. The Bad Mothers hangs today in the Österreichische Galerie Belvedere in Vienna. It is enormous and cold, and if you stand in front of it long enough, the woman's expression stops looking like punishment and starts looking like something else. It looks like someone who expected to be abandoned, and was, and isn't surprised. Every time someone paints a wound, they're painting their own. The greatest artists just do it so precisely that you can't look away.